that I think is really important is our role in designing the work of the other people in our organizations. And so, the word meaningful or meaningfulness means different things to different people, of course. I think if you'll let me just go back in time a little bit, the very first few people that were instrumental in studying this were, gosh, back in the late 50s and the early 60s. Fred Hertzberg was one of the early pioneers in this area. Hertzberg's, let's see, 1959 book, The Motivation to Work, was a bestseller back then. And his 1968 Harvard Business Review article called One More Time, How Do You Motivate Adults? Actually was and still is the #1 most requested reprint in the entire history of the Harvard Business Review. So as leaders, we've been working on this idea of how to get people to do more, how to get them to be motivated, how to get folks to come early and stay late and give their best. I think it was Peter Drucker that said, and I think accurately, that every employee has a reserve of effort and energy that they can only volunteer. We can't require that they give it. I think that's what makes really excellent coaches in athletics successful, is they are able to tap into not just what the players are expected to do, but into that voluntary area of effort that, by contract, you can't require people to come early and stay late and think creatively and be innovative and do their best work. You can require them to come to work. You can require folks to be there at a certain time. You can require them to do their job. Those are all compliance issues. But I think that's a healthy way for us as leaders to think about that. Every teacher, every school employee, including ourselves, we all have this extra, container of discretionary effort that we and we alone can decide whether we give on any particular time during the day. And so there's a long history in management and leadership science of how do you get people to go beyond their contract? Why is it that some schools, teachers just give more of themselves? They, over a long period of time, what are the characteristics? What are the characteristics of that? So it started out, I think, back in those days, one of Hertzberg's ideas that I think has a lot of agency for us is the idea of hygiene factors. You probably remember this from graduate school. Hertzberg theorized that the things at work that dissatisfy people, I don't know, you don't feel like your salary is enough, poor working conditions, I have to walk a half mile from my parking lot to get to the front door, relationships with supervisors and people who we maybe see as uninformed or unmotivated. Those are the types of things that demotivate people at work. And Hertzberg was one of the first to say that, you can't just flip the coin and say that those are the things that motivate people at work. So, your salary is a good example of that. If you don't feel like your salary is commensurate with your education and the work that you do, that's a demotivator. On the other hand, if you get a raise and now you make more money, that's not necessarily a motivator. So the same things that demotivate us, the flip of those things aren't what motivate us. I think the reason that Hertzberg called that hygiene science is that the analogy is that, here it is, flu season. And if you wash your hands several times a day, you can maybe prevent yourself from catching the flu. But nobody would suggest that if you're trying to get fit and robust in your life, that washing your hands is going to help you get there, right? No one's going to come up to you in January and say, gosh, you look different. Have you been working out? You know, you taking good care of yourself? You eating differently? What are you doing? Wow, I discovered it from Hertzberg, this guy that wrote back in the 50s and 60s. So what I do is I wash my hands 5 times a day. And I mean, I've been losing weight. I've been getting more fit. It doesn't work that way, does it? What makes you sick is not the opposite of what makes you well. And that was kind of some of the early science around adult motivation theory, is that we should look at what motivates people, not just limit ourselves to countering what demotivates people. Now, all that said, it's a good idea to not get sick. It's a good idea to not feel like you're underpaid. It's a good idea to have good working conditions. That keeps people from being demotivated. And let's be honest, that's a good idea. Let's also remember, though, that that isn't what motivates people. So if you look at what does motivate people, one thing continues survey after survey after survey to climb to the top of that list, and that is the meaningfulness of the work itself. What is it that I'm doing from 8 o'clock in the morning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon? Is it good work? Does it satisfy me? Do I think it's important? That one characteristic has never fallen out of the top 2 or 3 things that employees report are what motivate them most at work. Another area that, if you will allow me just a little more of a trip down memory lane here, another great contributor to this topic, I think, is the whole servant leadership notion. Robert Greenleaf and others who have taken up the torch of the idea that as leaders, we are called to serve our organizations. And a servant leader is a designer of high quality work for other people. Part of the work of servant leadership is to not just extract hours and calories from people who are employed and work for us, but to create the type of conditions at work that grow people, that cause them to be better than when they first came to work for us. I can't remember who had this quote, but I think it's a good one. And the quote is that, management might be defined as getting work done through people. But leadership, and especially servant leadership, is, I think, better understood as getting people done through work. And so from the history of servant leadership, there is this expectation that a servant leader designs the most motivational, meaningful work that they possibly can come up with, for it to be not just to get work done, but to be a blessing and to be a development force in the lives of people. Gosh, wouldn't it be a great legacy to leave as a school principal, that whenever you matriculate to whatever comes next for you, another principalship, retirement, work in some other area, becoming a superintendent, perhaps, that whenever you matriculate, people say, I was honored to work there. I worked there because it was just the place. It made me better. It was work. It was hard. Sometimes it was drudgery, but there was a liveliness about it that contributed to my growth and development. I certainly look at all the jobs I've had kind of in that way as well. So what I'm going to do is, I'd like to that's our literature review, right? If we were writing a graduate school paper, we could write a little bit about Hertzberg, and we could write a little bit about Greenleaf, and that there's been this history of leaders searching for what is it that truly motivates people. And what we've come up with over the years is there's nothing more motivational than the nature of the work itself. Does it feel meaningful to us? So let's break that down. Meaningfulness of work. I'm going to go to another camera and just show you a little checklist here, and we'll use that to kind of guide our conversation. Let's see. There we go. So 6 characteristics of meaningful work. Purpose, autonomy, challenge, mastery, recognition, and community. Now, gosh, if we could go 6 for 6, that would be pretty amazing, wouldn't it? But as you think about, that makes sense to me. If what I just said in the introduction to this resonated with you, I want to be the type of principal who not only gets the work done, but that people grow and develop because they work with me at school. If that's your aspiration, and that's a fine one, then here are some of the actual nuts and bolts about how we can do that. Um, let's look at number one, 6 characteristics. So number one is purpose. Connecting work to purpose. Let me go back and forth here just a little bit. Thank you. I remember being a high school assistant principal, and one of my duties was to supervise some of the athletic events that happened at a comprehensive high school practically every night of the week. And I remember I was supervising, or covering, we used to say, a JV girls volleyball match at our school in the gym. And so I was there, and I had my walkie-talkie on my hip, and I was scanning the crowd, all 17 of them, and watching and doing my duty. And the principal, his name was Dr. Bill Ship. What a great mentor of mine. I know that name doesn't mean anything. Bill passed away several years ago, and so when I can say his name, I always want to. Gosh, I learned a lot from him. He was a very successful principal. And he always came in and he said, "Hey, Mike, how's the game going?" I said, "Well, we're ahead by 2, or we're behind by 3. And I just remember one time he said, "Hey, just as a leadership idea," he goes, "Do you know why you're here?" I said, "Yeah, I'm here to cover the JV volleyball game, so nobody gets out of line and everybody behaves, and nobody tries to skip out from paying for their hot dog, and that's what I'm doing, right?" And he goes, "Well, yeah, you are doing that." And then I can almost remember every word he said. He goes, "One of the things that makes a comprehensive high school comprehensive is that it has great extracurricular opportunities for kids, and that kids can be successful academically in the classes, but they can also be you know, uh, successful outside of their academic pursuits by being in clubs, by being in sports, by being, and our job is to have an exhaustive menu of things that kids can get involved in to be successful. And what you're doing right now is you're doing the dirty work of that. We do have a comprehensive high school. We've got lots of opportunities, and all of a sudden I felt like I just had a promotion. I just got promoted from supervising the volleyball game to now I was in charge of extracurricular opportunities for all students everywhere. So what was he doing? He was connecting my work to the purpose of the school. That's what leaders do with respect to this aspect of meaningful work. Always connect what you're doing back to its purpose. Let's face it, sometimes what we're actually doing is not all that glamorous, but it is for a pretty glamorous purpose. And so part of meaningful work is always being able to connect what you're doing back to the overall mission and vision and purpose of your school. The second strategy that I wanted to share with you, thanks letting me go back, is the idea of autonomy. Autonomy, another good A word for that is agency. One of the characteristics of participating in meaningful work is that we're, I don't know, we are more like chefs than cooks. We're not always following directions. We have some autonomy about what we do. We make professional decisions. There's not someone looking over our shoulder micromanaging our every thought. That's one of the characteristics of meaningful work, is that you're the professional, and we trust you, and we trust your instincts, and we give you agency and autonomy Now, you can't do anything that's illegal and you can't do anything that breaks the budget. But other than that, don't just follow recipes, be a chef and not necessarily a cook. I know we don't have much time, but I just wanted to say that, in today's academic world as a principal, um, I think especially at the elementary school level, we often are implementing very recipe-ish concepts for learning to read, let's say, and there's good science behind this. Kentucky's well ahead of the game on the science of reading and on making sure that there's evidence-based practices going on for some of these important things like learning to read and write. However, as a school principal, remember that if you're out to attract the best people, it's best to emphasize areas where they have autonomy and agency. It's elusive and it's strange sometimes. If my job as a teacher is just to follow a recipe, in a way that's kind of a relief because I don't now have to be accountable. I just can follow the recipe and do what I'm being told to do. That's good for being evidence-based and for being aligns to the strategies that we know that work for kids. Still, as a principal, if you have a lot of very structured programs, it's a good idea to emphasize to your teachers that there are still opportunities for you to apply your sensibility to this, to be more than just a recipe follower, to be a bit of a chef as well. You'll attract and retain better people over time if you're able to do that. Hey, let's keep going. Let's see. Let's go to number 3 and talk about the idea of challenge. So this is an interesting one. This is kind of a little more recent with respect to the cognitive research on adult motivation theory. And that is that we do our best work when we're at the top of our ability, when we're pushed, when we're stretched a little bit, when the work requires us to really, in a way, recruit the entire continent of our knowledge and our skills. We always do our best work when we're working on a challenge. Now, a challenge has to be attainable, right? So there's a sweet spot there. It has to occupy all of my abilities. It has to be important, but it also has to be doable. It can't be something that's so far above my reach that I'm going to hesitate to give it the effort that I had. A couple of the administrators I worked with as an assistant principal, they had a saying. They said, with respect to assigning work to people, try to always give people a promotion. Have administrative assistants in the office do assistant principal work. Have assistant principals do principal work. Have principals sometimes do superintendent work. Because we always are at our best, it seems, when we're operating out of a stretch, out of a challenge. When my principal as an AP used to say, hey, Mike, will you cover this meeting for me? Or will you do this project for me? And I'm sitting there with a bunch of other principals from other schools. I don't know, it just sort of brought out the best in me. I'm not saying I always did a good job, but I always tried my best. I always felt like it was more fun to work in that challenging zone. Now, when you think about challenge, let's go to the next strategy, which is mastery. Almost there. One of the things that's a characteristic of meaningful work is that we have had enough time to work on it. We've had enough time to work with it that we are able to get good at it. I know you may feel this way too. I feel like sometimes as an administrator, I'm changing things up too much. It's like a new program every year, and then it was a new program every 6 months, and then lately it feels like we've got so many new approaches and projects coming down the line. And I know that's exciting and it's stimulating for people, but the truth is, if we keep switching gears too often, we don't allow people to get really good at any one thing. And that's one of the characteristics of meaningful work, is that it's satisfying. You can really build your skills. You can get good at it. If we keep changing up the projects and the programs that organize people's work, if we're not careful, one of the things that happens is we keep them in an area of perpetual novice uh, performance, rather than being able to get really good at things and enjoy the fruits that come from mastery. Hey, thanks a lot, you guys. Almost there. Let's go back. Number 5 is recognition. And this is an interesting one, right? I think it's always sort of surprised me that in every bit of the research on adult motivation theory, that this one comes up. Really promising, powerful, successful adult professionals, they very much value recognition of their work. Now, not token recognition, not just teacher of the week or employee of the month, or, or recognition for things that aren't all that important. Like, hey, Mike, good job not parking in the wrong parking spot, for 3 weeks in a row. Here's a Starbucks gift card, although I'll take that anytime. The idea of recognition is adult professionals, the evidence is clear. They value recognition from people they see as credible observers of their work. So when a principal is seen as an instructional leader and that principal gives teachers feedback on their instructional practices, that's the kind of recognition that motivates people. That's the kind of recognition that makes your work more meaningful. Not just token, way to go, you're a great member of the team, but when we actually say to teachers, I noticed that you did this yesterday, and I thought this was the effect on the learning in your classroom because of that. And I just wanted you to know that I thought that was a really good move on your part, and recognize that. Way to go. Keep it up. That's specific recognition by a credible person, an instructional leader, really ups the meaningfulness of the work for teachers. Let's do one more. 6 of 6, and that is the 6th characteristic is community. Community, of course, means that people find it very meaningful to work on a team. Not just any team, but a high-performing team. And maybe not just a high-performing team, but sometimes a team that's taken that extra step where everyone has one another's back. Scott Peck, the author of The Road Less Traveled, he wrote several books and articles on this. He called it true community, which is that level of connectedness where it feels a little more like a family than just a work group. So if we can have people work together in teams where people really work well together, that can be effective as well. So we got 6 ideas, 6 characteristics of meaningful work: purpose, autonomy, challenge, mastery, recognition, and community. Don't know if you can remember all 6 of those, but here, what I'd like to do is, if we could jump into a quick breakout room, 5 minutes, which will bring us back with just a few minutes to go to wrap up. I'd really like to ask you, in a group of 4, 5, 6, I think we're going to, Keith's going to help me out with the breakout room. We'll do a 4.5 to 5 minute time. What I'd like to ask you to do with just a smaller group of participants is to say, of those 6 characteristics of meaningful work, which are the 1 or 2 that most resonated with you? Was it purpose, autonomy, challenge, mastery, recognition, community? I don't know that any of us can go 6 for 6 in that, but as a designer of work for others, those are some key characteristics. Maybe just a quick check-in and say, for me, it was the idea of challenge or mastery or autonomy. Pick 1 or 2 of the 6 and share out, as for you, what you thought was most resonant with your thinking on leadership. Can we do that? About a 4-minute breakout time. Jump in. Thank you.
All right, the breakout rooms have popped up. You are
Hey, Stephanie.
Hello.
You're big on our screen, so that just means you got to lead us.
Oh, okay.
Is she
Perfect.
big on everybody's screen?
I actually feel like the mastery part stuck out to me a lot. I just left the classroom
Gotcha.
a year ago and I'm now a coach. And I think because we constantly change and want to try the best new thing, that we really don't give people a chance to be masters at their craft. And that can be really frustrating. Mhm. And
So-
recognition was my second.
So right now, what stuck out to me about what he talked about was autonomy, mainly because we are teaching districts and people about high quality instructional resources and why they are so very, very important. And they are. I believe in them. I believe in making sure that everybody has a high quality instructional resource. But I think where teachers are having trouble is that they still do have autonomy and how they present that, how kids practice and process. And so where I'm finding a gap, it's helping principals learn to coach teachers in that area, like how to make that resource their own. So let me pause this recording.
all right, Mike. Everybody should be back.
Great. Hey, everyone. Thanks for jumping into that quick breakout room. I know it didn't give you a lot of time to do a lot of high level processing, but sometimes I think when there are a number of things like 6 different characteristics, nobody can tackle 6 things at once. So tackle the ones that you feel the most strength in already, the ones that resonate with you. The purpose of today's session, there's a long history of in leadership of understanding adult motivation. Obviously, it gets more quality work from the adults that are doing the work at your school. Whether it's pandemic, prior to the pandemic, or during or after, we're still after always attracting and retaining excellent teachers. That's still the #1 job of every principal in Kentucky. Can I create the conditions at my school that over time attract the most talented, dedicated, high-performing, effective teachers that I can find to come and work at my school? And can I retain those people over time? Of all the things I do, that has the highest single effect size on my students being successful. One of the things that is an attractor and a retainer before, during, and after the pandemic is how meaningful is the work that we've designed and engineered at our school for our key people to do. I hope you'll consider making me a part of your network. I'd love to hear what you have to say about the session, strategies, ideas, contributions, suggestions. I think I put my email address in the chat, mike@rutherfordlg.com. Keith and the whole team, thank you for the kind opportunity to work with your team. It's always a pleasure. Kentucky is a great state, and I'm honored to kind of be on the team there for the last several years. So thank you for the opportunity, and thanks for your good work, everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. And you are not kind of part of the team. We claim you for sure. So as a genuine Kentuckian. So thanks. All right, everybody, let's give the silent applause to Mike. Thank you for being here. Much appreciated. Good stuff. And we will start the next round of breakout spaces. Those breakout rooms are open. So if you are a presenter, you can head on there. If you're a breakout room host,